Nation with AIR, providing the greatest network capability and best technical expertise for business.
It's just 6:50. You're listening to Breakfast Business with Vincent Wall. The global fight against money laundering and other serious financially related crimes is forcing financial services firms, ranging from local credit unions to large international banks, to intensify their due diligence assessments of customers and potential customers, including a category intriguingly called politically exposed persons. Stubbs Gazette, the long-standing credit checking agency and publisher, says it's developed a product that can help in this process. And Stubbs Gazette owner James Treacy is with us in studio. James, before we get into what your product does and who it's targeted for, tell us about the Financial Action Task Force, because this is a body that's basically upping the ante significantly for financial firms everywhere, including credit unions, about what they've got to do to try to combat money laundering and other crimes.
Good morning, Vincent. Maybe if we look at the extent of the problem globally, according to Pricewaterhouse, between 2 and 5% of global GDP is related to money laundering and terrorist financing activities. Now that's between $1 and $2 trillion annually. According to Grant Thornton, at least 3 billion of Ireland's GDP is related to money laundering and terrorist financing activities annually. Now, this was such a big problem that over 2 decades ago, there was an intergovernmental body called the Financial Action Task Force was set up. And there's 180 countries around the world are members of the FATF, including Ireland. And the role of the Financial Action Task Force is to develop policies and to help to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing activities.
And they're effectively bringing in a directive which will have to come into Irish law by the middle of this year that's upping the bar significantly in terms of what banks, credit unions, other financial services firms will have to do in terms of trying to combat it.
Yes, it's called the Anti-Money Laundering Directive 4, and the Dáil has to enact it into legislation in June of this year.
Where does your product? What type of product is it, and where does this come into this into this whole process?
Well, one of the things that a financial obligated entity is a financial institution that would include credit unions, banks, and even now under the new money laundering directive, it includes betting shops and online bookies. So what they have to do is, at a very basic level, they have to know who their customers are. They have to know who their members are. It's called a Know Your Customer check. So what we've developed screening tools for the Irish financial institutions. So we're getting data from a variety of sources, including the CIA, the FBI, the United Nations, Office of Drugs and Crime, European sanctions lists. So that would have a list of known terrorists, known companies that are in breach of international sanctions. We also get information from Interpol. Now we integrate that with data that we have for the Irish market. So we would look at what's been reported in the media in terms of people who've been convicted of terrorist crimes or money laundering. So we blend the data that we get from these international bodies with Irish data.
And all of this information, you've mentioned some pretty exotic agencies there, but all this information is in the public domain. You're basically just searching it, collating it, and making it usable for financial services firms.
Absolutely right. It's all open source data. So, but it's all over the place. It's scattered in various different silos. So we take that information and we blend it and aggregate it.
Now, take your local credit union. It's unlikely, although not out of the question, but it's unlikely that an international terrorist or somebody associated with an international terrorist is going to try and open an account or lodge a significant amount of money in a local credit union. But what are they looking out for? What would trigger their suspicions about a possible customer? And where does your product come in there?
Well, firstly, credit unions. They would have quite a few accounts that would be charitable organisations or trusts, and that is one of the ways that international terrorists actually launder money. So they create charities in various countries, and then they raise money, and that money could be distributed to some war zones around the world. So the credit unions and the banks have to know who the beneficial owner of these trusts and charities are. But at a more basic level, they have to know who their members are, and there's a new category of person called a politically exposed person.
Tell us about this, yeah.
A politically exposed person could be anybody from a TD, Enda Kenny would be considered a politically exposed person, members of the cabinet, senior members of the security forces and defence forces, CEOs of sporting bodies or non-governmental organisations. They are all considered politically exposed people. Not only that, but their husbands, wives, family members and close associates are considered PEPs as well.
And what does this mean? That they might be open to bribery or corruption or issues like that?
Yes, well, this is the thing. With the Financial Action Task Force, they kind of identified that these people in these roles might be open to corruption. Does
this go down as far as local councillors, perhaps?
There's no clear guidance on that. Now, we do have information on local councillors, but so far there's no prescriptive guidance on whether a local councillor would be considered a PEP.
But again, your product, whether it's a bank or a credit union, your product will basically go through the credit history and other data for politically exposed persons, including their families. Including friends and close associates. How well is the product going? How long is it on the market? What sort of interest is out there?
We started developing it over 2 years ago, so a lot of credit unions will be currently using it. A lot of our other customers, including banks, financial institutions, would currently use it for onboarding new members and also for screening their existing members or customers.
And is it a product that is probably most of use for the Irish market, or are you hoping that there might be an international market out there? Have you access to sufficient data to make it marketable overseas?
Oh, we have global data. We have information that comes from all around the world. So we are developing an AML portal, anti-money laundering portal for not just the Irish market, but also for the UK markets and probably further afield.
Long way from what we used to know as the old paper-based Stubbs Gazette.
Well,
does that still have a role?
It's going back full circle. Like Stubbs Gazette is almost